Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are starting tonight with those fast-moving developments in the court from the White House in Minnesota, just 2 days after that deadly shooting in Minneapolis. And let's start with that breaking news. Multiple sources telling NBC News tonight that the Trump administration is planning to cut back on the number of Border Patrol agents in that city sometime this week. And the man who's been leading the immigration crackdown there is expected to leave tomorrow, too. This is after the president and the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz, today talked on the phone. The president said, as you can see here, that the two seem to be on a similar wavelength. For his part, Governor Walz says the president talked about reducing the number of agents in his state. And the president sending somebody new, Border Czar Tom Homan, to Minnesota. Now, this is interesting because Homan has been kind of sidelined from what's happening there after what we have seen develop in the last couple of weeks. This is clearly changing after Saturday's deadly shooting, where the eyewitness videos we've seen so far contradict some of what federal officials initially said happened, when at least one officer shot and killed Alex Preddy, that 37-year-old ICU nurse who had a gun and who officials say was legally allowed to have it. Top Trump administration officials at first using phrases like would-be assassin, suggesting Preddy planned to massacre agents, that he brandished a gun. But look at the multiple videos now coming in from eyewitnesses from different angles, showing Preddy was not holding a weapon during the incident that started with him coming to help a woman being pushed to the ground. That's an angle of those early moments of the interaction slowed down there. The videos also appear to show that a federal agent took what looks to be a gun from Preddy's back holster before he was shot. At one point, you're going to see Preddy's hands circled in the video. No, it doesn't appear there's a gun in those hands. We've got team coverage tonight. We're going to get to Tom Winter for sort of a walkthrough of these videos, how it fits into the investigation. But I want to start with Monica Alba, who is live for us at the White House, because, Mon, there's some new information now that we're just getting in from our team, from our colleagues Gabe Gutierrez, Julia Ainsley, that appears to be a pullback by the federal government of the current position on the ground in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I think you are starting to see several things that are pushing to a total shift in strategy and approach here, Hallie. And that top line that you just mentioned from our colleagues is a significant one, because the commander of CBP, Greg Bovino, somebody who was dispatched to Minneapolis to be very involved in the day-to-day operations, we are learning is expected to depart tomorrow. And that is coming as we know that the Border Czar, Tom Homan, has been sent by the president to now go oversee the day-to-day operations there on the ground. And that seems to be a direct result of this move. And we know, according to our colleagues, that what could follow here is a reduction in agents from that agency, from Customs and Border Patrol. And the reason that that is also important, and we should remind people, is that some of those agents were involved in the shooting death of Alex Preddy on Saturday. Those kinds of agents from that agency, I should say, and not necessarily those specific agents that we know have actually already been relocated for now, it seems, out of the state. But what's important to point out about that is if they do end up reducing many of those federal agents, that also seems to be, Hallie, a direct byproduct of a conversation that President Trump had today with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. This is something that he had been calling for, local officials had been calling for, and that now it seems the White House and the president were open to this idea of, again, reducing the footprint of some of these additional agents that were surged to the area. And I think the messaging just can't be overstated here of what it is signaling if you have somebody like Greg Bovino now leaving, who really made some of the more controversial and at times inflammatory comments over the weekend, claiming things without providing any kind of evidence about Alex Preddy and his motive or what he was thinking in the lead up to that incident in which he was shot and killed. Hallie.
And Monica, this breaking news happening late today in just the last few minutes doesn't come in a vacuum here. There had been clearly some indication that those around the president, or at least some inside the Republican Party, were frustrated with the initial response. We're not happy with the initial response from DHS after the shooting of Alex Preddy. We know Democrats were largely livid, as what they saw, as they described, Senator Amy Klobuchar, for example, describing it as almost gaslighting from the administration. But you look at somebody like Republican Senator Ted Cruz, for example, somebody who is a fairly reliable loyalist of President Trump's, of the White House, saying this on his podcast. Listen to this.
What I think the administration could do better is the tone with which they're describing this. That immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing, that we took out a violent terrorist, hooray. Escalating the rhetoric doesn't help, and it actually loses credibility. And so I would encourage the administration to be more measured.
And now it seems like we're seeing the White House distance the president from Secretary Noem, who came out initially after the shooting and said that Preddy was brandishing a gun. Again, the video contradicts that. From Stephen Miller as well.
That really stood out to me today, Hallie, in the briefing where Caroline Leavitt, who says she speaks for the president, basically said they could not endorse those comments. They didn't really want to weigh in on whether they were appropriate or not. But at one point, Caroline Leavitt did say that the president did not believe that Alex Preddy was a domestic terrorist or that he was seeking to, quote, massacre law enforcement. And you mentioned Senator Ted Cruz. We played that sound there. And Senator John Curtis of Utah, also a Republican, saying tonight he disagrees with Secretary Noem's premature DHS response before all the facts were known and weakened confidence. That is something you are starting to see come out a little bit more from Republican allies, but certainly at the White House, that was a notable shift in tone today as well, Hallie.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.